Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Round 2, fight. I am joined by the hosts of the amazing Horror Dads podcast. I got Jamie and I got John here. How you guys doing tonight?
What's up, man? Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we're great, Ken. Thank you so much, man.
I'm so excited to be working with you guys again, man. This is incredible. By the time you guys are watching this, you've already seen me work with them, ranking our top 10 horror posters, or you've listened to me and Ashley on their podcast, talking about our favorite supernatural horror films. If by some reason you didn't catch either one of those, the links are down here in the description, as well as their website, where you can catch some awesome threads to go along with. Soon, maybe they'll be having some more. I don't want to get too much into that right now, but there will be some more new merchandise soon, and maybe by the time this is dropped, it'll be there. So only one way to find out, and that's by clicking the link right down here in the description. So before we get there, John, what can you tell us a little bit about Horror Dads and what you guys do over there?
So we're a horror podcast. We've been around a couple of years now. We focus on bringing on, we do some guest episodes. So we have creators in the space come on, whether they be potentially actors, directors, graphic artists, visual designers. In our niche, really, we do actually, speaking of graphic artists, we bring on a lot of content creators in the space. So t-shirt designers, graphic designers. We've had a pleasure of having a ton of folks on that do that. But we also do episodes, just Jamie and I. So we'll do kind of, top 10 lists where we'll discuss top 10 favorite winter horror movies or top 10 bars and horror films we'd want to go hang out and have a pint in. That was an episode we did last year. So stuff like that. So we do it to have fun, and we're brother-in-laws and best friends. So it's a great time to hang out with one another.
And that's the best thing about listening to your guys' podcast. You can really feel the familial bond there. It's not blood, but it's still family, and you can feel that. It's just like you're hanging out with your buddies when you're just listening to the podcast. So John, who was just talking, he's a marketing communications professional by day, by night. He works as a podcaster, a musician, and graphic designer. But now we're going to talk about Jamie a little bit. He works in the logistics industry by night, also a podcaster and horror dad. And by horror dad, we mean someone who instantly falls asleep to a horror film once he finds a free moment to himself. So Jamie, what about Horror Dads is really the most exciting thing for you? Because I know the older we get, we become fathers, we become husbands, and our loves kind of drift a little bit towards our family. But horror is something, as long as with music, that always stays with us. So when you think about your podcast, is that like your big getaway from everything and like your comfort zone?
Yeah, 100%. So the reason John and I started this podcast is for a reason and an excuse to get together where the wives wouldn't yell at us necessarily. We could watch some horror, we could talk horror, and that's all we did anyways. We're like, let's just put it, record it and get it out there into the space. But a horror dad for me, man, it's like you said, it's all about that balance. It's striking that balance between being a horror lover and being a dad, putting the family first. Maybe not hang that disgusting, grotesque poster that you want to hang because it'll scare the shit out of your kid.
And it is funny trying to find that perfect medium, to not push your kids too hard into it, but to let them know that it is okay to like horror. You're not weird. It's not taboo. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, I still love you. You're my flesh and blood. So I can't stress this enough, guys. Make sure you're checking out the podcast. And like I said, the great threads they got over at the shop. So right down here. And the cool thing about it, and I'll have this link in the description as well, the beautiful children draw pictures for you, man, when you get something ordered. So it's a little bonus. It's hanging up on my fridge right now. We're so proud of it. We got it in. So
we
tell
put
the
them to
kids
work.
We said thank you for that.
Yeah, they're so into it. And they always kind of like, it's like they come up and they're working at a restaurant. They're like, all right, what are we doing today? So we always do it down here in the podcast space. And they have their drawing accessories and they run up and they're like, all right, what are we going to do? And I'll be like, oh, do a vampire, do a witch, do a pumpkin, do this, do that. And I do it with them, and they actually help pack the orders too. So it's a lot of fun. We didn't want to do like a print on demand service, which are great because you can get literally like whatever you want when you need it. And those are amazing outlets. But for Jamie and I, like the reason we're doing this is kind of representative of how we do our merch component of this, which is like a family oriented thing. It's fun, and it's done with love and care. So we want to make sure our hands are on it. So yeah, any support on that front is greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. And like I said, they fit comfortable and I love wearing it around. One thing that usually when you get shirts like this, there's usually, you know, like a lot of blood, a lot of cut. I have lots, you know, seen dad shirts that have the cussing on them, like fucking horror, you know, like, and that's what I love about this. I can wear this outside in public and people, you know, I've had so many comments on these shirts, and I'm just so happy that if I could send anybody your way, I'd love to do that. So,
and our buddy, I gotta say this real quick. Our buddy Matt Pepler, who's one of our friends that we made through the podcast, and who's literally become like one of Jamie and I's best friends. He was kind enough to do that design for us on that shirt, and he also did this one. So Matt Pepler, mpepler.com. He's got a ton of great stuff. Most of these prints behind me were him, so he's a great dude, and he's got great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the proof's in the pudding right here. So Matt, good on you. This shit is awesome. I love it. Thank you for all your great work. What was that website? mpepler.com?
mpepler.com. Yeah, we'll make sure we get that to you too, so we can pop that down below. Yeah,
all you guys got to do is click this link to check out all his work as well. So I'll thank you for that as well. We did also have to do one more shout out, I believe, to a friend of the Horror Dads podcast.
Yeah. Gavin Moore, his handle on Instagram is Mud Nelson, and he's been with us since the very beginning. I think we had it was Vincent DeSantis on, who did one of the or he did several Friday the 13th fan films. Never Hike Alone, Never Hike in the Snow, and he's got another one coming out. Great dude, but he found us there, and now he's a fan of the Sledgehammerhorror channel. And we were talking to him today, and he's just like, he's as good as it gets. He's been with us since the beginning, and I know he's had to move around a little bit. He's got a little adversity he's working through, but dude, and Gavin, we love you, buddy. So thanks for hanging with all of us, man.
Yeah, we're happy to welcome you to the family, and I'm glad you've been a part of theirs for so long. But now we know that you guys are horror dads, but at one point you were horror kids. So I had to start for you somewhere. So let's go back to the past and talk about how horror started for you guys. Jamie, let's start with you first this time and talk about your first horror movie. And Jamie, your first horror movie was
The Gate from 1987.
What an amazing film. Love this movie.
I have it right here.
So much. Yeah. The Gate is another one. The Gate is the gateway to horror. If you got young kids that you're trying to start off in the horror world and you don't want to go over the top too scary with them, I strongly recommend this as a very good starting point for children to kind of gateway them into horror to see if it's something that they want to be a part of. So we know where it started for you. What about you, John? Your first horror movie was?
My first horror movie we're going with today is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers from 1995.
Don't have that DVD right here, but I do have the shape back here hanging out with us. So
Love it.
Got a little bit of both of us here today.
Yeah, very nice.
So The Gate and Halloween 6, what complete opposite ends of the horror spectrum? I just talked about how The Gate really is a gateway drug into horror, where Halloween 6 to a child is probably like the heroin. Like you've made it full blown to the addiction at this point. So, John, how old would you say you were when you seen Halloween 6?
So Halloween 6 came out in 95, right? So I was born in 87, so I was young. I was probably 9, so I probably saw it early on in 96, and then later the following year saw Scream for the first time, right? So I kind of have a funny story, because my first horror movie very well could have been another film I also watched this night, because I had a sleepover at my friend's house. We were living in Chicago at the time, just outside of Chicago in an area called Naperville. I wish it was Haddonfield, but it was Naperville. So we're in Naperville, Illinois. My friends Mike, Pat, and Steve and I, that was always the house we would go hang out. It was like you could do whatever you want. Pat and Mike's parents brought us to the video store. They said, get whatever you want. And we were like, all right, we're going to watch Halloween tonight. We're going to see the most famous movie that everyone keeps talking about. Like, we want to get into horror. We're going to rent Halloween. So we get to the video store, and we rented what we thought was the original Halloween, but we ended up renting Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, which had just come out. So rented the wrong movie on accident, but we rented this and The Burbs both in the same night. So we watched this prior to The Burbs, luckily, because that's like having a palate cleanser after being actually terrified under the age of 10.
Right.
So yeah, that was my experience with it though, and I hold it really fondly in my heart to this day because of my first go with it.
Sure. Jamie, I want to bounce back to you with The Gate. Do you remember who you were with the first time you had seen it?
Yeah, so I had two. I have two older brothers, 10 and 8 years older than me, and I was born in '81. So when The Gate came out, by the time it hit HBO or however we watched it, might have rented it from the movie store. I was probably around 7 or 8, and my brothers kind of, I think they were babysitting me or watching me, and they just had it on, and it was kind of forced upon me. But I was huge into. I don't know which I saw first, but I was still am a huge Goonies fan. You always loved those like friend group fucking movies, like Monster Squad's one of the first movies I watched as well. So those kind of movies as a kid, especially as like an 8-year-old, you're already kind of riding bikes with your buddies all around town. And so movies like this just fucking hit the spot for you. They're instantly relatable. And it's like PG-13 is fun. It's not too over the top. There's definitely some scary shit in there, but nothing that's going to give you too bad of nightmares,
Right. Well, you just mentioned how there are scary scenes in the movie. Which scene would you say it was that affected you the most from The Gate?
So it's funny because when you're a kid and you start looking back, it's mostly just snapshots. Like it's the moss in the jar. It's the little fucking creepy demons running around. It's the rock, whatever they call it, the split open with the gems inside. It's all that stuff, but the scariest scene even today for me is when he first encounters the parents outside. He thinks they're home. They're not home. They're just demons. But that's when we start to see body horror incorporated as well. Not just stop motion effects and forced perspective effects, but this is where you get to see the body horror and shit like it really opens you up to like we've already mentioned, it's a gateway to heavier things.
Dude,
I love that. He thinks he's safe at that point.
I was just gonna say, the comfort you felt as a kid, like, or the opposite of comfort when you were at a store and you couldn't find your parents for like 1 second, like life is over.
Yeah, that panic. Right?
Yeah, dude. Like if you look down the aisleway and they're not there, like, no, I left them here. Holy hell! Like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I just so distinctly remember that as a kid, and now, like, imagine Jamie, you and I go in the grocery store and being like, oh, we got separated. I'll just call an Uber to get home, I suppose, or whatever I'm going to do. But yeah, just like as a kid, your parents they're your water, right? Like that's your lifeblood. Yeah. So they upend that. It's so scary.
Yeah, and a character like Glenn was instantly relatable.
Yeah, how he starts choking him, you've been naughty. And then he just, pokes him in the eyes and the pus and mucus starts coming out. Like, oh, God, I love that scene. That's still to this day one of the most memorable scenes for me as well. What about you, John? What scene would you say it was from Halloween 6 that affected you the most?
So it's kind of odd to reflect upon this now, I guess, as an adult. So my answer probably would have been different in 1996 in February when I first saw this or whatever. But now in reflection upon it, honestly, like the atmospheric environmental townscape of like after the intro sequence, which is just fucking nuts. You come into this town, which is Haddonfield, Illinois. I'm sitting in Illinois while I'm watching this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the town that they're showing is basically my street. I lived at 1532 Preston Road in Naperville, Illinois, right? So they're like coming in on the street and there's this kid running across dressed as a pumpkin. And there are these other kids playing a prank. And you have this like angry, worst dad of all time shitbag with curly hair coming out, swinging his micro axe, screaming, Michael Myers bullshit, right? As he's like knocking down the sign. So that whole like that whole assimilation into the environment, which happens pretty quick. It's like a 2.5 minute scene of like, all right, this is where we are. Yeah, we blew your face off with the intro sequence. There was a lot of weird stuff that happened. Cults, naked babies, death, just a guy that looks like he's from Pittsburgh that got his head twisted off. Like all that happens. But like for me, it's coming into that town and feeling that like, all right, this is basically where I live. All that shit that I just saw is connected to this somehow. Scary, but now as an adult, kind of comforting, thinking like, yeah, it's suburbia. So
for sure. And that's the thing. I never even put that together, living, it's just like here, like we watch, I can't think of the name of the movie now. It Follows, that all takes place in Detroit, and you watch the movie and you're like, oh, I know this place, I know that place, I know that place. The movie it wasn't filmed there, but you get the Haddonfield, Illinois, just like Wayne's World, these things that take place in Illinois, and you're watching it just like, yes, absolutely, so that's a cool connection to make too with Halloween that I never really put together.
Yep, for sure. I mean, it's like any town Midwest, right?
Yeah. For sure. So with the gate, Jamie, what would you say when you think about the gate now? What's the first thing that pops into your head?
It's a good time. I focus on the good times, like the beginning, the dig in the hole, the kind of mystery of the whole thing. That's always my favorite part of movies anyway, especially horror movies. It's the setup, learning the relationships. So yeah, for me, that's what I think. I think of the pause of the fun times, shooting the rocket.
This is definitely a movie where you can have a lot of fun too. Because like you said, when we watched these movies as a kid, like you said, The Goonies, Monster Squad, The Gate, Stand By Me, we're watching these movies and it's like, this is me and my friends. It is another one, The Losers Club. Like that was us growing up, like the kids that were weird and like to hang out and catch frogs and, go on bike rides and go down the trails and try to find crazy shit. Like watching these movies as a kid definitely had that effect on us because we knew this is us. We're watching ourselves, our peers on TV. So I completely agree with what you're saying there too, with watching them now and the nostalgia I feel when I watch these movies. Just remember being a kid and doing a lot of the things that I see them do there is just so much fun to watch now.
For sure. Yeah.
That's why
they almost teach you how to grow up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, exactly. And I feel like Stranger Things came at such a perfect time because that was legitimately, that came out right as Jamie and I started having kids, right? And it was like, oh my God, this encapsulates the friendship of me, Mike, Pat, and Steve going to the video store to rent Halloween 6. Like, this is the embodiment of that. And I'm so excited to have something that I can share with my kids right now who are just becoming old enough to like flirt with some scenes from this, and they can start to experience that concept and like someone else gets it. Same thing with Harry Potter, I think, which is a more, I suppose, kid-friendly variation of that concept too, of just like camaraderie, friendship, hanging together and like having experiences together in the community and that. So it's so important. But yeah, dude, The Gate does that so hard.
Oh, nails it. So well, I'm going to bounce back to H6 here for a minute. We talked about which scene affected you the most, but what would you say your favorite scene from Halloween 6 is?
Oof. So the sequences, it's funny now, again, watching it as an adult, because Paul Rudd is such a comedic actor and he comes in so serious. Like I think his first, and this was his first movie. And the scene where he like calls into the radio and he was like, I was one of the lucky ones, right? And he's like doing this like narration that's so like, he's speaking from down here in the center of his chest. And it's so funny. But as a kid, particularly, tickling the nostalgia bone, the Barry character is so like ridiculously over the top, and it nails the idea of like idolizing someone who's a shitbag, coming to realization that they're a shitbag, and then being in like a formative year and being like, oh, how do I respond to this, right? So the whole dynamic between like Barry and the brother's girlfriend, I think is super interesting. And then couple that with like the sister being across the street, she can see what's happening, and then there are those tandem kills that happen that really reference the original Halloween, reference Friday the 13th, part 4 a little bit in there too. So that whole like amalgamation of sequences after they head back to the Myers house, all the candles are lit, the sisters across the street. So like the way that whole sequence sort of unfolds, I'd say is my favorite like chunk of that movie.
Well, and Barry, is he that radio DJ? I've only seen Halloween 6 a couple times. Wears crotchless panties and barks like a dog. You know?
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dude, it's like this Howard Stern, like
total Stern, man. Like,
Yeah.
Howard Stern.
I wasn't gonna
figure.
drop that bomb, but it's a total Stern moment, man.
But and I don't know if it's supposed to be that or not, but I think they're just alluding to the fact that like you idolize someone that you think that you're gonna love, and then you meet them and it's like, oh my God, this person sucks.
Yeah.
So that like the way that unfolds it's interesting. And watching this as like a 9 or 10-year-old, you look at that and you're like, oh my God, I just learned a lesson, you know, from this fucking movie, which has cults and babies and blood thorn logos and shit. Like, yeah, it's a little bit of
if I remember correctly, Howard Stern got offered that role, but at that point he was filming Private Parts, and so he turned that role down. So
you know, I'm gonna I know you got another question for Jamie. I'm gonna do some research for a second here because that is news to me and that's actually unbelievable.
Okay. And let me know, because that may be something that I just heard that was a fake rumor. So let me know while we're doing that. Jamie, I did have another question for you. We talk about The Gate, and this is a movie that for both of us means a lot. Very nostalgic. With The Gate, would you like to see this movie remade today?
Yeah, I think you and I kind of bullshitted about this before. It's hard, you know, it's hard. We kind of had our remake, which is Stranger Things, kind of remade all of these things for us, you know? But yeah, I mean, if you could do it the right way, maybe no CGI, because part of what makes this movie memorable and makes it a gem is all the actual effects, you know, the physical effects. So if we could get a remake with some good actors, good young actors, and some good effects, I'd be all in.
Well, I mean, could you imagine like the practical effects that we could do with that giant minion when it comes to, you know, like that's a scene, or another scene I'd really like to see them do, you know, because one of my favorite scenes personally from this film, always and forever, is the eyeball in the hand, you know, and then you see him take a shard of glass and stab it into his own hand. Like, that's another scene for me that I think, like you said, with the correct acting and the correct effects, if you don't overuse your CGI in this, if you want to, you know, powder in the CGI over top of your practical to make it pop a little bit, perfect. Don't go full CGI on it. So I totally agree with you there. Were you able to
you
find
don't want to go
about
full
that,
thing
John?
prequel?
I see some grumblings about it. I'm gonna operate under the assumption the rest of my life that was the case. I haven't confirmed that, but send people.
It must have been a rumor.
Questions, Ken.
Right. So you just brought the Thing prequel, Jamie, and I think, you know what? I don't hate the Thing prequel. I hate the effects, and I think it completely ruins that movie. But, you know, you look at some of the best practical effect movies of all time, and when they try to remake those movies or prequel them or sequel them, and I got a perfect example. You got the Thing prequel, which was god-awful with the CGI. Yeah. You have the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which was completely ruined by the CGI in comparison to practical effects. And then we talked about a prequel. We talked about a remake. Let's talk about a sequel that was ruined by CGI. And to me, that's American Werewolf in Paris. American Werewolf in London is one of the hands down best practical. The werewolf transformation of that movie is my all-time favorite, hands down, no questions asked. And then you look at what they did in American Werewolf in Paris, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, they just shit all over the practical effects that they had in the first one.
I've got another comparison for you. Fright Night original or Fright Night remake, they CGI the shit out of the Fright Night remake.
Oh my God, yeah.
And when you talk about transformation scenes, I mean, the movie, honestly, I feel like, was it my sister? Jamie,
it's me and your sister, yeah.
You guys keep trying to, like, because Jamie and I, like, the concept of Disturbia, Rear Window, Summer of '84, like, you put us in that environment, you could, the premise of the story could be like someone cleaning a litter box. And we're like, no, this is fucking interesting. We are in.
I'm in.
Like,
yeah.
how are they going to clean this litter box? Like, as long as that's the setting we're in. So they accomplished that for sure through the remake, but the practical or the lack of practical effects and CGI in the Fright Night remake is just so upsetting. And the
Yeah, it's
Evil Ed scene
cringeworthy.
is
Yeah.
like one of my favorites.
Oh, and you were talking about the Evil Ed. You know, his transformation scene.
One of the best.
Dude.
Yeah. Totally
I
phenomenal.
love that character too. I love that whole
one of the best comedic characters in a horror movie of all time. Oh, you're
yeah.
so
Completely.
cool, Booster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about your guys' first horror movies and how they affected you. And Jamie, you're going to get to cheat here for a second because, John, I'm going to start with you. My little buddy Ghostface here has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, John? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
So this is a tough week to ask that question because the new, speaking of Ghostface, the new Scream came out, which we enjoyed. But also we got 16 inches of snow yesterday. So I've really been beating up the thing. So it depends on the day you ask me. It depends on the season. But Scream, Friday the 13th, part 3 or 4, or The Thing would be up there. So this week I'm going to go with The Thing being my all-time favorite. Talking about practical effects, and that movie's just made so much impact on my life. And I actually have my phone is named Kurt Russell because of The Thing. And my dad got in my car yesterday when I was rescuing him from a snowstorm. And he got in, and on my dashboard interface, he was like, "Why the fuck does that say Kurt Russell?" And I said, "Because of The Thing." And he was like, so that's what I'm going with. The Thing.
Oh, that's so fucking awesome. So what about you, Jamie? Your favorite scary movie? What about you?
Yeah, mine is my little Ghostface will answer for me. It's Scream. It's the perfect mix of humor, nostalgia, fun, and fucking fear. It's got everything you want in a horror movie, and it's my number one.
100% believe that Scream saved the horror genre.
Yeah.
And think of all the movies we have because of Scream too. I know what you did last summer poster here. Urban Legend sitting over here. Like it
Halloween
gave us so much
H2O.
more than just itself. Yeah, dude. Oh my God. I love Halloween H2O so much.
Yeah, there's so many movies that I love that wouldn't exist without Scream. Valentine's, another one. Cherry Falls. Yeah.
The Faculty.
Is a big one. Like, and that's the thing. Like, without Scream, where is the horror genre today? And it's funny how you have these guys with Wes Craven, John Carpenter. They're constantly reinventing themselves and reinventing the genre. You know, because you had Halloween, then you had Nightmare on Elm Street, then you had Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which really was the gateway into Scream. You know, he dipped his toes in meta with that, and then he cannonballed into the pool with Scream into the meta world. And you know, Scream totally brought up Halloween H2O. You know, so I mean, like the way these two would bounce off each other and be creative off each other and pay homage to each other is just such a phenomenal thing. And I absolutely love Scream as well. I'm a Scream guy. You guys know that. Scream 2022. I have opinions. You guys can watch it. You know, you might have already seen my opinion video, but so before I let you guys go, I want to thank you for coming on. It's always an absolute fucking pleasure to work with you two. I'm going to start with you this time, Jamie. We're going to go back to the gate and we're going to rank this on a skull count. So what we're doing, we're not ranking the gate on production, quality, acting, score, nothing like that, even though they're all amazing. What we're doing is just strictly ranking it on how much it affected you on first viewing. So 0 skulls, not effective, 5, very effective, and anywhere in the middle. What would your ranking of the gate be?
I hate to be too obvious, but I have to go with five skulls, man. I still think about it. It's John knows this. Before it got the Blu-ray treatment, I'd always had in my mind this movie. Like, what is this movie? I couldn't remember the name. I couldn't remember what it was. I just had these snapshots of scenes, the moss in the jar. And then, finally the gate came out. It started hitting streaming, and I was like, oh shit, it's the gate. And I could not wait to get the Blu-ray. And I have T-shirts now, and like all this. Thank God for the horror industry, what it is now. I can get a gate T-shirt, which you never would have thought was possible. So yeah, that's 5 skulls, man.
And like you said, we talk about how Scream reinvented the horror genre, and where would horror be without Scream? Where would you be without The Gate? So 5 skulls is absolutely a perfect answer. I'm going to bounce that over to you, John. 0 to 5 skulls. What would your ranking of The Curse of Michael Myers be?
Yeah, so it's tough because following Jamie's logic, like I feel like any move I could have picked Howard the Duck as being my induction into horror, and I feel like I would have to give it 5 because like here I am almost 30 years later talking about it. That being said, now it's impossible to remove my reflection on where I rank it in the franchise at large. I definitely like it more than 5. I like more than Resurrection. Ken, I know you're not a huge fan of this movie, but yeah, so I'd say 4.5 skulls, just on account of the fact that I'm here talking about it 30 years later. So I'm going to go 4.5 skulls.
Perfect. And you just brought up Howard the Duck, man. I'm telling you right now, when I was a kid, that scared the shit. I'm not Howard anymore. Like that just scared me, man. Like when I was a kid, the 2 things I remember the most about that movie was Rooney from fucking Ferris Bueller's Day Off being the scariest fucking dude ever, and the duck titties when Howard was flying through. Like I remember as a little kid, I was like, those are boobies. I know I just saw boobies. And they were on a duck. That's weird. So I
just
did
remember
say at the top. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just remember so distinctly, like when you're a kid, pre-internet, like the authority was those guides that would be published every year, and they would put, I think it was Siskel and Ebert would put out like a recommendation guide, and I don't know if they would do I wish they would have done a skull count, but they might have just done like thumbs up or thumbs down or like out of 5. I gotta find, like I would love to find one and check it, but my aunt and uncle, who were like my conduit really into like embracing the idea of horror, they always had like the fresh copy of that on their coffee table. And I remember so distinctly, like they always hated on Howard the Duck. Like they always shit on Howard the Duck. So in my mind, like when it comes to the benchmark, like there are movies up here and then there's Howard the Duck, which is the basement floor. And I don't know why, man. Blame Siskel and Ebert.
I still have that VHS downstairs, man. Like I love Howard the Duck, man. Like that's one of the, for me, it's probably top 20 movie of all time. I love that film.
Oh shit! All right.
Yeah, I dig it, man. Like it's so dope to me. But then again, I watch it with nostalgia glasses because I watched it so much as a kid that it's impossible for it to be wrong for me now. So we did talk about it at the top, guys, but now we're at the third act. The credits are about to roll. So I want to remind you again, you can check out more of these guys at their website right down here in the description. Make sure you're checking out, if you haven't already, our top 10 video, also down here in the description, talking about our favorite horror movie posters. Maybe some of the movies we talked about today were on that list. Only one way to find out. So until next time, guys, you too, John and Jamie, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror. Stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.